All right, so this video is for those who missed the class. It's on law of cosines, and law of cosines, you're going to see three different formulas, but they're all pretty much the same. If you have a triangle, A, B, C, then the side across from A, the one between B and C, that's side A. Law of cosines just says if you square A squared will be B squared plus C squared, the other two sides, minus 2 times B times C, so it's the same two sides, times the cosine of A that's across from it, that angle. Well, that's true for if you start with side B. So B squared would be A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine of B. So it's all pretty much the same, so you don't need to memorize these formulas. They'll be given to you anyhow, but it's more of how you use them. Let me show you. Okay, so you're given a triangle and set up your array, your three angles, your three sides. C is 36 degrees. The 29 there is side B. It's between A and C. That's, oh, this is 36 degrees. Sorry, make sure I get my angles in the right place. So that's B is 29 and 22 is A. That's A. This would be side C. Well, this is a perfect setup for law of cosines because we don't have the pair across from each other we need for law of sines, and we can't figure out another angle without having two of them. Can't use any kind of Pythagorean rule or anything because this is not a right triangle. So you have to use law of cosines, which says start with the side you're missing. So if you know an angle and two sides and you don't have that pair, start with that side you're missing. So you'd say C squared equals, and then it's always the other two sides. So 22 squared plus 29 squared minus 2, 22, 29, same two numbers, and then cosine, and always of that angle that's across from 36. Now this whole thing can go into Desmos, and that will give you C squared. So then, to get just C, you're going to want to do the square root of whatever answer you get, and that will be side C. So if we go over to Desmos, you're going to want to use a scientific calculator, right? So you're just going to say 22 squared plus 29 squared minus 2, that's always in the formula, 22, 29. And it doesn't matter which order you put the two sides in, it's going to work regardless. Cosine, we're in degrees, so make sure that stays in degrees. And it was 36 degrees. And enter. So there is your side C squared, and then you can take the square root of that answer. So that side C must be 17.11 if we round. So this side, 17.11. Now, when you're doing law of cosine, you only want to do it one time. Now, to find my angles, I don't want to use law of cosine anymore because I have that pair across from each other. So I can go to law of sine. Now, when you do the law of sines, there's an important thing to remember is that law of sines, when you're looking for an angle, will never give you an obtuse angle. And it goes back to the sine of an acute angle and the sine of an obtuse angle are both positive numbers. So always make sure that you pick, when you're going to look at which one you want to find first, do the smaller one first. And that's important so you don't get an obtuse angle. This might be an obtuse angle, and if it is, we get the total wrong answer. This one, there can only be one obtuse angle, so it can't be A. So I'm going to do sine of A over 22. And then to solve that, remember this is an inverse problem, so you'd say 22 times the sine of 36, cross multiply, divide that by the 1711, and then you're going to have to inverse the sign. So Desmos would be 22 sine 36 divided by 17.11. That will always give you a decimal until you inverse and make sure we're doing law of sines now, so inverse sine of that answer. It'll tell you that angle is, we'll round to the nearest angle, 49 degrees. So this has to be 49 degrees. Now we can use our 180 rule, right? 180 minus the 49 minus the 36. I don't need to go to the calculator. My other one here, 180 minus 49 minus 36. That leaves 95. So that was, or is, an obtuse angle. So, and then there's your triangle, all solved, all 6 parts, law of cosines. Let's see that again. All right, so we have angle A is 18 degrees. We know that 54 is side B, 38 is side C, and again, no pair. We have one angle, two sides, not the pair across from each other. So this is a law of cosines. So I want to find A first. So A squared will equal, doesn't matter the order, 54 squared plus 38 squared minus 2, always at 2, 54, 38, cosine of the angle, which is 18. Remember, anytime you're doing cosine or sine, that's always going to be an angle there, not a sine. Put that in the calculator, take the square root of the answer to give you A, and going to clear all that other stuff out. So that is 54 squared plus 38 squared. Oh, I missed 38 squared minus 2, 54 in parentheses, start parentheses, 38 cosine of 18. So make sure you're putting the whole thing in. You don't want to split any of this up. Now these would be okay to do by themselves, but this is one big long multiplying thing, so it has to be all together. Enter that. There's your squared side, so I need the square root of that answer. So it's 21.37. So this 21.37. All right, so now law of sines to get the other angle, sine of 18 over 21.37. You can see here it looks like B is obtuse, but you can't always tell by pictures. Last one it might not look like that, but make sure don't find the obtuse. Find the smaller one next. So that would be the sine of C over 38. So again, 38 sine of 18 over 21.37 will give me the sine. So I need to do the inverse. So it'll be 38 sine of 18 divided by 21.37. That's the sine, so inverse that answer, and that's a 33-degree angle. So that C is 33. And then when you subtract from 180, 180 minus 18 minus 33, that's a 129-degree angle. 129. And again, check, the largest angle, largest side, which we have, and your smallest angle with your smallest side, which we have. So all that makes sense. If we didn't do it in that order, we would get angles that just don't make sense. All right. So if you're watching this, now would be a good time, not now. How about now? Now would be a good time to go ahead and pause and see if you can solve this triangle doing what we did. Where P was 62 degrees, that side is R, 84, and that side is Q, which is 56. So yeah, pause it, see if you can figure out the rest of that triangle, and then start it back up and see how you did. All right, so hopefully you started with side P and said that P squared would equal 56 squared plus 84 squared minus 2, 56, 84, cosine of 62 is the angle. Put that in your calculator, take the square root of that answer. Let's see. So in the calculator, it was 56 squared plus 84. I think I did them the other way on the page, but it doesn't matter. Minus 2, 56, 84. Cosine, as long as I do the cosine of the angle, which was 62, and then take the square root of that answer, and it's 75.99. Too bad that doesn't round up to just 76, but we'll leave it as a decimal. So 75.99. Now, if there were to be an obtuse angle, it would be the 84, so don't find it, find the smaller one first when you're doing this law of sines. So 62 over 75.99, sine of Q over 56. So on my calculator, it will be 56 sine 62 divided by 75.99, then inverse that answer, and it's a 41-degree angle for rounding. So Q must be 41 degrees. And then if we subtract from 180, we end up with a 77-degree angle. So it's not obtuse. So if you would have started, just always try to start with a smaller one when using law of sines. Now, for the next one, hopefully you guys got that right if you did it by yourself. On this next one, you're going to be given all three sides, and that's another situation where you have to use law of cosines to start out. Now again, you only use it one time. Let me show you before I'm going to come back to that. You have three sides, so A is 10, B is 20, C is 15. So there's this law of law of cosines. I don't have the pair. I don't have any angles. Can't find anything else because law of cosines will give you an obtuse angle. You want to start, if you have all three sides, with the largest one. Because if this is possibly obtuse, you won't get it right if you don't start there. So instead of, like, we could do that 20 squared equals 10 squared plus 15 squared minus 2, 10, 15 cosine of, and this would be b because we don't know what it is. Then I'm going to have to do a bunch of solving to get this answer. And I don't want to do that when my calculator can do all this for me. So let me show you on here what we're going to end up doing. Back to the formula. So, and it doesn't matter which formula we look at. If you want to solve for this cosine of A, which you have to get it alone first, you have to get rid of all this other stuff. And since this is all being multiplied, we're saving this for last. So first, get rid of the b squared c squared. So you do a squared, you'd have to subtract the b squared and subtract the c squared to the other side. That would get rid of those. Then you would divide everything by the negative 2bc. That would get rid of that. So all that would be left is cosine of a. So if we can get this number, then we can just do an inverse cosine and get the answer. So when you have three sides, instead of thinking about this formula, think about this, putting it into the fraction. So don't think about it this way. Think about it as a fraction. Starting with the largest, so on the top you do 20 squared minus the other 2 squared, minus 10 squared and 15 squared. On the bottom, always negative 2 parenthesis, and those two same sides, the 10 and the 15. That I'm just going to put in the calculator, and then we'll inverse cosine. Let's see that in the calculator. Now, with this one, I showed you this yesterday, you do want to start out with a fraction. I'll show you why in just a second, but start with that fraction, and then on the top would be 20 squared minus the 10 squared minus the 15 squared. If you switch that 10 and 15, wouldn't matter as long as the largest one goes first. In the denominator is negative 2, and those two same ones you subtracted, so 10, 15 multiplied. That gives you negative 2.5. That negative with law of cosines tells me this will be an obtuse angle. If this answer is negative, going to be an obtuse angle. Now, if I forgot to start with that fraction and I did 20 squared minus 10 squared minus 15 squared divided by, it only makes a fraction at that one. And that's no good. You want the whole thing to be a fraction. So that's why I'm saying don't do it this way. Start with that fraction for this first. Then we just need to make sure you're doing inverse cosine when you're doing law of cosines for this one. So inverse cosine of the answer, like I said, it'd be obtuse 104. So that is, oh, yeah, 104 degrees. Now it doesn't matter which one you solve from here. So the sine, you're going to have to go back to law of sines, 104 over the 20 equals the sine of A over 10. That's 10 times sine of 104 divided by 20. That'd be 10 sine 104 divided by 20. And inverse sine, that answer, that's a 29-degree angle. So A is 29 degrees. Now that you know 2, take your 180, subtract them both. and that would be 47 for C. So always start with the largest when you know all three sides. Start with the largest side, put in that fraction, inverse cosine. All right, so one more. This is, if you can't really read that, that's 47, that's 55, and this is 34. So go ahead and try that one. Pause and see if you can label, set up your law of cosines, and figure out the angle first. All right, hopefully you finished and you're going to check. So the 47 is z, the 55 is between x and z, so it's y, and 34 is. So I'm going to start with the largest one, just in case it's obtuse. So I'd say 55 squared minus 34 squared minus 47 squared, all over -2, 34, 47. And then inverse cosine. Clear all that. Start with your fraction. 55 squared minus 34 squared minus 47 squared over, that's going to be -2, 34, 47. So because that is a positive number, that's going to be an acute. So when you do the inverse cosine of that answer, it'll give you an acute 84. So that angle Y is 84 degrees. All right, and then set up your law of sine of 84 over 55 sine x over 34. Cross multiply 34 sine 84, all divided by 55. And then inverse the sine, right? So it was 34. Oh, sine 84 divided by, and because I'm multiplying these, I can divide after that. It's when you're adding and subtracting that you have to do that fraction form. That was divided by 55. And that is law of sine, so I'm going to inverse the sine of that answer, 38 degrees. So if x is 38, 180 minus those two ends up being 58 degrees. And that triangle is solved, so we are all good. All right, so do your work on that law of cosines assignment. Good luck, have a great day.